till after that, 28. Like I guess
Here's
that's
here.
the
I mean,
earliest.
here's a
But
question I have for you guys. So there's this theory, right? That essentially the best time for a progressive to come out is, on the heels of like a Trump presidency. But there, I don't really think that's true. It seems more like it's more likely after 8 years of Obama, for example. What do you guys think is the best time for a progressive to really take hold?
I
Yeah,
think that's
I
right.
agree with that.
Yeah, because what what Obama did was show. Um, I mean, sure, I guess you could say there was. I don't know. It wasn't really progress there, but it showed what a inspirational candidate could do. But then you see a real inspirational candidate in the sense of the actual policies and the platforms, and I think that began to expose sort of the failings of the Obama administration. Whereas after someone like Trump, most voters just want to get someone else, like put anyone else in there. Like that's kind of what happened with Joe Biden. Wouldn't have won in 2016, but he won in 2020 because Trump was the president. So that's I think you're exactly right to point out that the best time is after a Democratic president to get someone like a progressive candidate.
Yeah, I was watching this CNN voter panel in, I think it was 2019, and something that one of the normie Democrats said stuck with me. She said, "Look, I don't care about any of these things. Sure, I am more progressive, and I'm paraphrasing, but I just want to run back to Joe Biden because he feels like home." During the Obama years, there wasn't this much divisiveness and political instability, and I just want to go back to what's familiar. And you're not going to get that after an Obama. Then people are going to be frustrated because they were promised something and they didn't get it. So that's when you capitalize on it. Like after 4 to 8 years of Joe Biden, that's when you capitalize on it. But with the way that American politics works, is it's always this pendulum where 8 years, 4 to 8 years, we have a Democrat, and then we flip back to a Republican. So it's very likely that the next president will probably be a Republican. I mean, it's hard to say, but that is really the opportunity to pounce. The problem is that there's a lack of candidates who are qualified and ready to run for president that are actually progressive, and we really risk that vacuum being consumed by someone who's like a fake progressive, another Obama, or some anti-establishment huckster like Andrew Yang or Tulsi Gabbard. Not them specifically, but people like them. So we're kind of in a shit predicament. And as David said, time's running out, so we can't afford to be here. But, here we are. So the situation is pretty bleak right now. I'm not going to lie. But there's nothing you can do. You just keep pressing ahead and try to make as much progress as you can, given the limited opportunities that we have.
Yeah, it's important.
Yep.
It's definitely important to understand because it was definitely a hypothesis that was put forward that after Trump, 4 years of Trump would be the best time for Bernie Sanders. But it doesn't seem like that was true at all. When I was phone banking, people would say like, "I don't want to come home and look at the news and it's Trump on here." So they just wanted to get Trump out. They didn't care about any of the other stuff. Joe Biden's very familiar to them. It does seem like after 4 to 8 years of Obama, it's a mix of frustration and drowsiness where, liberals are asleep essentially, right? Because there's the pendulum swinging. That does seem to be the best time. But when you talk about how bleak it looks, I'm curious how you guys have motivation to continue going or interest to keep pushing forward, considering how bleak the future is.
You need to. I mean, otherwise, why am I alive? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to fight for what I believe. I'm going to fight for the interests of others. I'm going to fight to make a better world, regardless I interviewed Avi Lewis, who is a candidate in Canada. He ran for Parliament here, and I asked him, how do you remain optimistic about the future? And he said he's not optimistic, but he's hopeful. So you have to have hope while understanding that you can't just assume things are going to work out, because he sees optimism as, oh, it's going to work out, it's going to be fine. He doesn't think that. He thinks we need to have hope, with the understanding that yes, things can go horribly wrong, things can go to shit, they are going to shit, but you also have to remain in the fight and to fight for a better world. You have to remain hopeful. And I think part of the issue, or part of the the way to do that as well is look in the past, and look at the sorts of things that were happening, in the 60s, and the idea, the assassinations, and the idea that, there was no hope at all at that point, when any possible hope that was coming up were people that were killed. And then it kind of, at that point, it devastated the country. And you had these moments in history where it felt like there was no getting out of it, yet humanity got out of it and they moved on. Now, the issue, the wrinkle to that obviously is climate change, where it's something you can't really wrestle with. It's happening. It's the climate crisis is now. We have to address it now. So we have to fight and do what we can in pushing this forward. And ultimately, there's going to be a lot of people, I think, in a few years who are right now, they're lawmakers, they're leaders, and they're going to have to come out later on and say, I was wrong. And there's going to be hundreds of them who were wrong to not fight for this issue as hard as they can now, because their grandchildren are going to be in the middle of this, are going to be the victims of the climate crisis if we don't turn this thing around immediately.
Yeah, so for me, I have been, I think, a lot more doomer. In fact, when I was doing Dystopian Times, we did an hour-long panel on doomerism and how to overcome it. And that wasn't just for viewers. That was for me trying to talk through how do we survive, right? And I am a lot more cynical. If you watch the Humanist Report videos from 2015, I'm this little bright-eyed cuck who's just so excited about the world. And now it's like, all right, we're all gonna die, folks. It's just a matter of time. Everything's going to shit. But my through the cynicism, there is a sense of clarity, and that, okay, I've accepted the fate of humanity. I don't know if we're gonna make it. Doesn't really seem that great. 100 years from now, 200 years from now, will there even be a humanity? What's the world gonna look like? I don't know. So what I tell myself is, if we're gonna go down, I'm at least going to go down fighting. So that way, when I'm 85 years old, if I'm lucky enough to live that long, and I see wars over water, at least I could tell myself I tried. And that's really what's kind of keeping me. It's this feeling of responsibility to future generations, and this belief that it's irresponsible for me to stop trying. I might be unsuccessful. I might approach everything in the incorrect way. But as long as I'm trying to make a difference, I feel like that's all that matters. And maybe we will be successful. Look, I'm a fan of the Dark Souls series. I've gotten my ass kicked by hundreds of bosses. Sometimes you emerge victorious, and it's unexpected, but it happens. So you keep hammering away at it, but meanwhile, you don't bask in the terribleness of this time. So I've really had to adjust the things that I do as a coverer of news. It gets really depressing. So weekends, I really do a hard checkout. I don't look at social media. I try not to go on Twitter as much. I try to distract myself with video games. I try to inject my show with more fun topics where I just do the junk food politics. I shit on Dave Rubin or Tim Pool because it makes me happy at a minimum. It's not necessarily very substantive, but I try to have more fun with it because you can't afford to not have fun. This is our world, like it or not. So are we going to be miserable and check out, or are we going to continue to fight? And I'm choosing to fight because we can't not do it. As David said, like, you don't have to be optimistic, or as that candidate said, but I think that being hopeful that maybe there's a chance, maybe it's a 1% chance. Either way, that's a chance that we've got to take. And yeah, so we don't have the choice. We've got to keep going, because I want to live in a better world, not a shitty late stage capitalist hellscape where we have wars over water and billionaires are watching peasants fight over crumbs.